No place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Evil maze upon the starry sea, we're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, voyage across the celestial sea.
the abyss of the cosmos we set sail. Through crimson skies our ship prevails. Across the stars a celestial flight, metal warriors bound by might. Ooh, yeah. In this realm of shadows darkness unfurls, a symphony of chaos, where planets whirl and nebula, fury untamed, sailing through the void where nothing's the same. We ride through the cosmos, a metal storm, defying gravity. Our spirits transform through supernovas and celestial clouds. A stellar voyage forever in the skies.
Digging deep in the Martian soil, searching for that precious ore. With pickaxes and heavy hearts, we're the miners of the cosmic shore. On this barren land, we march as one, unearthing treasures under the sun. In the cratered plains where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars' hidden riches. We're truly bred. We're truly bred.
Sailing through the cosmos, it's my final voyage, leaving Earth behind, seeking stars to my homage in the depths of space. When no one can hear, I'll sing my space shanty. Let the stars draw near, raising up the anchor, setting sails to the sky, bidding farewell to this world, no tears left to cry. With constellations as my compass, I'll navigate to the outer realms where my fate awaits. Oh, I'm a stargazer, drifting through the night, chasing dreams that sparkle like stars shining bright. I'll serenade the heavens with my cosmic lullaby, a space shanty melody as I say my last goodbye. To the stars we shall roam, through the vastness of space, no place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the stream. Do stuff. Hope everyone is doing well today. Nigel, Lord Volpax, Donald, I hope you're all doing well.
From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic.
Good morning, Slow Motion. I hope you're doing well. Doing as well as can be. I hit stream and then all of a sudden my body was like, you need the bathroom. So, biology taking the forefront of entertainment and then just messing with it. Good morning, Captain. Hope you're doing well. Oh, let's move to left hand. Oh, sorry, right hand. Doing okay. Bit tired, but such is life. My watch says I did sleep, so that's always good. What does it say today? Yeah, it says I got 8 hours of sleep. Of poor sleep. It's awesome. My watch mocks my sleeping patterns. I don't know. There are people that don't like fart jokes, but they're few and far between. It's not me. I enjoy a good fart joke. Evidenced by the fact that I'll read an hour-long story just for a fart joke. This one's to wake me up. This one's to keep me going. And in case of emergencies, we have some coffee as well. I suppose one of the sponsors I should look into for the channel is the energy drink stuff, like Gamer Subs and what's the other one? Nope, gone. Gamer something as well. They do drinks like this. Caffeine and sugar, and caffeine and no sugar. Well, Nigel, according to some people, that's kicking all our asses, but that is a very different subject. Hopefully you haven't glued them to yourself again tonight. Yes, yes. If it's too funny, it makes it a lot more difficult to read. Excuse me. Everything looks like it's going well. My favorite coffee company, well, the coffee I drink is Nestle coffee. So I'm pretty sure that I do not care. Really? Are you spam? Alright, sorry about that. Delivery people letting me know that they're standing outside instead of, ringing the doorbell. I can tell you who wrote that story, I think. Easy peasy. It was Squiggle Studio. Huh? Squiggle Story Studios. It is number 909, TFOS. Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't make a playlist for everything. I already have over 100 playlists. And you just get to a point where... interesting. Yeah, it gets to the point where people just don't see the playlists anymore. Yes, it does look like Twitch is behaving weird. I don't know what is causing it, but it isn't coming through on the chat. It's very, very strange. Everything's good. Alrighty, I think we can start with the work and see how far we get. Twitch is definitely being twitchy. Awesome, June. I mean, it helps the channel, and I'm glad you're enjoying them. Work mode. There we go. Where are we? Yeah, that's the light thing. Why? Hello? Why? Nothing's changed since yesterday. That is just at the tip. What is that? That's interesting. Okay. Okay, now it's gone. Very, very, very strange. I love it how I changed nothing. And yet, day to day, things change. I suppose, and as a metaphor for life. Change happens whether you want it or not. I don't know. I think it was the green screen. Could be. I don't know. Do not know. Right. Anyways, back to work. I don't know. With the green screen, it makes everything just a bit more difficult to diagnose. I mean, it could have been something on the teleprompter screen. Could have been something with the lighting. Could have been something with the software. Okay. Yeah, but anyways, it's sorted now. We don't have the thing. I don't think. Yeah, it's fine. I'm waving. Hi. But it's sorted. That's the main thing. M1. M1. Got a sneeze brewing. It's been brewing for the last 5 minutes. Hopefully it's done soon, before I start narrating. Could be. Could be. It's not an M1 Garand, though. so I doubt it. Alright. That was quick. Who knows? Moustache attacking me. I promise I'm not crying. It's just a sneeze. Oh, come here. There we go. Teleprompter is now straight-ish. All right, we're ready for recording. Video recording, audio recording, and away we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Magic and Factory, written by Terran on Air. It was a factory world. The grounds were of flat concrete, and the high-rise walkways were of steel. There was a constant hum of electricity in the air that could only be noticed when the power went out, and eventually was as silent as death. It was made by the humans. Rather, more religious folk believed the humans had a hand in building it, while all other peoples were made for their respective areas and tailored by the greater spirits to work and toil away at their specified works. The humans had no place they specifically belonged. It wasn't that they didn't have skills and abilities with specific purpose in mind. It was more like the world itself was built by their own hands. So everything in it was something they could be found working on. They did not hail the spirit in the boiler lands the same as the buildings did. No, their relationship was more familial than that. They showed little difference to the spirit mother than canteen lands. They showed little difference to the spirit mother of the canteen lands. They would pay her their small tributes, and they would pay her their small tributes and take their edibles as they relaxed for a few short minutes before getting back to their strange works. They didn't have our reverence. They didn't seem to have our loyalty either. The humans weren't seen often, but we did talk with each other about them. People had their stories. They weren't so foreign as to be mythical creatures or something out of legend, but they were seldom enough to spark rumors and things. I didn't believe half of it until I met one myself. I worked in the candy forges of the Eaterlands for a faction under the guidance of the spirit named Hublub. There we made his Hublubs to be gifted to the Mother of Spirits. And distributed from her canteen aisles at a reasonable price. It was common and a dreary day. The steam climbed high into the sky, making artificial clouds in the late afternoon sky. Yawning, I watched the vapors twist and float high into the sky before dissipating into nothingness. The metal belts kept moving along at a quick pace as the tubes above carried candy pieces into large vats and containers before dispensing them onto a belt to be packaged down the way. My job was a simple but tedious one. I was responsible for regulating how much candy got onto the belt, and if it was ever too much, it would block up the machine, and worse things beyond that. Scratching my nose and rubbing the sleepless scratching my nose and rubbing the sleepiness out of my eyes with an orange furred paw. I tried my best to fight off sleep as my vision drifted from the glass panel to the belt and back to the panel. Occasionally, I would take on a can of energy-boosting drink off the console, remove its metal lid, and take a sip of the sugary liquid. Despite its name, no one really believed that it would give us energy. Rather, it only ever made the conditions worse and hurt the teeth. But we were addicts all the same. As I had my eyes pitched close with the rim of my lips, downing the rest of the insufferable ambrosia, I swear I could hear the noise. The problem was that in between the roaring machines of the factory world, you could distinctly make out all sorts of noises. You could just never tell where they were coming from. A sound of machines grinding up the candies to pieces. Could be as easily from your machine as 4 machines down. It was almost impossible to tell where it was coming from. And I was hearing a sound. I pulled the can from my wetted maw, not caring much that a bit was dribbling down the fur of my face as I looked around for the culprit. I would have to act fast, or whatever was causing the problem would turn into a real headache. My eyes scanned over the area from one machine to the next. There wasn't anything that immediately gave it away, but the noise still persisted. My feet carried me away from the console. Where was it? It was out there, but... Oh no. I could see the steam rising from my machine. The sound was rhythmic and came in bursts, like a metal crunching into itself. I ran forward to hit the stop button, but it was too late. Steam was rising up out of the machines. The belt was stopped. I walked forward to get a closer look, but I didn't enter the fog culminating around the area. One of the fixers more than likely saw what was going on, but I'd have to go find one anyway, just to be sure. I started to walk away. There was another noise. It was something like an animal stuck somewhere. My body turned back around. My hand went for a flashlight in my pocket, but the beam hardly penetrated through the mist. It wouldn't be the first time something made its way in here, but it would be the first time I saw one get caught in the machine. It was rattling. It was thrashing against the inside of the metal. There was a crack and something like a bark, or more like a gurgle. It was spitting, rancid kind of noise from something that sounded like it was in great pain. Something popped. I heard bolts and pieces of shrapnel fall to the ground as I backed away from the fog. Whatever it was strong. There was a thunk as it hit the floor and coughed up a grunt as it did. I could almost see it. There were colors all wrapped up in each other in that hot, wet cloud. It rolled around for as a moment before setting itself upright. I tried to get my feet, and I tried to move my feet, and as I did, I got its attention. I tripped myself up and fell on my chest, then flipped myself over and tried to crawl away, backing away as I could. I could see it skitter across the ground on its uneven legs as its multicolored and bulbous body kept nearly falling over from its sick movement. It ran towards me. I cried, "No!" and tried to guard my face. Yet, it didn't hurt me. As I looked up, there it was in front of my face with the head of a push broom stuck in its mangled mouth. As my view followed the handle, I saw a man in a stained shirt holding onto it with one hand. He belched and grunted, saying, "Don't worry. Don't worry. I already told the mechanic what happened." He tucked the handle of his broom under one arm and pushed the thing back with a single hand. In the other, he cracked open an energy drink and splattered a bit of its contents in his palm before downing the entire thing. don't know what I'm supposed to do there, but... He cracked open an energy drink that splattered a bit. He cracked open an energy drink that splattered a bit of its contents on his palm before downing the entire thing. I asked him with a shaky voice, Who are you? He looked over his shoulder with a scream. He looked over his shoulder with a creased brow and simply said, Matthew, Janitorial Division. He cleared his throat and looked down at the critter that was attempting to chew its way through his cleaning implement. He called back to me, I'm guessing you've never seen a crud muncher. Nasty little things. They spawn out of the machines when the mechanics get lazy and don't clean the machines properly. The negative energy from the workers mixed with the neutral magics of the spirits starts inhabiting candy residue in the machines, and these things pop out. He talked, and I could hear more noises. There were more of them in the machine. I saw another flash of color and screamed out, Look out! Without even cocking his head, he lifted the broom with one hand and slammed the head of his broom down on the jumping creature, burning the two onto the hard concrete floor. He looked down to his worn makeshift weapon and told it, Here, hold that. Letting go of it, the broom held the two things in place. The broom obeyed his command. It obeyed his command as he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a plastic bag. He pulled the mouth of it open, fanned it out. He pulled the mouth of it open, fanned it in the air a few times, and it floated there for him as he tossed his can inside. Then he pulled the broom up with the two monsters still biting at it and knocked them into the bag with his fist. He's done this before, clearly. He treated them like nothing could be more normal. Picking up the bag and walking back to me, I could see the two creatures trying to fight their way out to no avail. My jaw was slack, but I felt better knowing someone just came along and took care of those things. His eyes met mine. He looked back at the place where they came from and then back at me saying, there's probably more of those things in there, so I would stay back. He then he looked off to a random direction and gave a high-pitched whistle. Nothing happened. Then I could hear it, rolling. Something was speeding its way to us from far away on wheels. The sound of sloshing water overtook the sound of still-running machine. I saw it. It was a janitor's mop bucket. As it got closer and closer, it started to skid to a halt in front of the man. He pointed down to it and said to his bucket, You stay here. I'll be back to clean the rest up after the mechanics are done. Then he looked down at me. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything. Anyway, I'll be back in a minute. Then the human walked off with his cargo in tow, probably going off to dispose of the two live monsters. That was the first time I ever saw a human. But after that, I think I believed the stories. I believed that humans had a hand in building this place. After all, even the brooms and buckets answered their beck and call. End of story. All right. Done, done, done. Lots of bigging and bonging. Yeah, we're almost at TFOS 2400. Another round number. But yes, I do agree. Kentucky Ballistics is quite funny. I may not watch all of his stuff, but I watch enough. Good morning, Matty D. I hope you're doing well. So I noticed something very interesting today. There's been a very big drop in HFY stuff. So I was looking at some statistics. And it does seem like the HFY subreddit is a bit down since of July. But that could also be because of August. That could also very well be because of the changes that Reddit has made. So that sucks. Alrighty, next story. Yeah, but I mean, they've done some pretty big changes recently, and they've gone public, or they've started the process of going public, which is maybe not so great for others. Yeah, I avoid AO3 like the plague, for no other reason than somebody recommended it to me once, and I did a search, and all I got was NSFW content for a basic search. And they were like, no, there's a special way to search, so you don't get the very, very NSFW content. So I was like, if I need to search in a very specific way to avoid the NSFW content, probably not the place where I want to be. Fair enough. That could chase a lot of people away. Fair enough, peanut gallery. Fair enough. Poison the well. And is very, very weird, but typical of Twitch. Hmm? What did I do there? Ah, that's what I did. Okay. Copied too many things. Okay, done. Done. Nope, that was the wrong button. Let's not do that. Move that over there. Move this up here. Recording video, recording audio, screen changed. And away we go, chat. Away we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Bone Debt, written by Dark Prince 010. All right, kiddo, I said as my little one bounced up in bed with excitement. What story do you want me to read you tonight? I continued to thumb my fingers over the array of well-worn book spines in the small shelf in their room, but I knew what they were going to ask for anyways.
Tell me another story about the bones and the aliens, Daddy.
I smiled. It had been the story most requested over the last few months, for understandable reasons. Snuggling up against me and putting their blanket tight to their chin, they turned, happily snuggling their face into my chest, before closing their eyes and patiently waiting and listening. All right, let's see. About 1,500 years ago, a great and powerful alien hive species arose and started an intergalactic war. The other spacefaring races at the time managed to fight them to a standstill at a terrible cost. The aliens, my little one cut in,
The Hulk.
I smiled at the pronunciation. It was definitely simplified, and something that probably would have been offensive to an actual member of the species, as the name was pronounced with a series of guttural growls and gasps. With a series of guttural growls and gasps. But it was close enough for a 7-year-old. Yes, the Harkak had agreed to a ceasefire with the warning. Yes, the Harkak had agreed to the ceasefire with the warning that their species would return to expand again, as their philosophy demanded. In 1,000 years. As their philosophy demanded, in 1,000 years, their hive mind was suspected to be a silica-based structure, one that had trouble changing old paths and old ideas. So in the times after that, the millennium of rest, the Harkak gradually became expert lawyers, judges, and decision-makers, thanks to being so impartial to the unwaveringly strict. Thanks to being so impartial and unwaveringly strict.
And that's when we came in, right, Daddy? That's when we came in, right, Daddy?
Chuckling, I said, That's right, kiddo. That's when humans first met the Galactic Council, about a century or so back. We had managed to finally get out of the old solar system with some faster-than-light drives, and were, with some hesitation, welcomed into the wider galactic community, even though I think a lot of them still see us as a little bit of backwater hicks.
What's a hick, Daddy?
It's not a very nice term for someone you think isn't as clever as you.
Oh, well, that was before they knew about what we can help, right, Daddy?
I nodded. Yep. So, it was only a decade or so before the hive was set to revert and attempt the to be galactic rulers. Of course, a lot changes in 1,000 years, and all but the most conservative among them did not seek to wage open warfare straight away. They realized that it may be possible to satisfy their psychological drive to be seen as rulers without actually conquering again. So apparently, their philosophers had mused for several centuries on how best to do this, and the proposal they put forth to the Galactic Tribune was one that they had carefully considered, apart from the brand new humans, of course. They had demanded that for every individual of every species, the Harkak must be given a bone or equivalent structural organ undamaged in order to pay the tribute and ensure the hive mind's peace. At the time, the other races were panicking over this, as almost no other species that possesses bones has any redundant ones. There was talk of having to sever secondary limbs or perform major surgical extractions across the entire species in order to pay for the Harkak's peace.
But we can help them out. That right, Daddy? We can help them out with that, right, Daddy?
I rubbed his head. That's right, kiddo. We had some interesting suggestions to offer. And it turns out that the Harkak are, unfortunately for them, stringent enough under their own rules that they couldn't change the terms of the conditions afterwards. And so, that's where you come in. Did you clean it off good? My child beamed, holding out the fist that they had clenched in the entire story.
Yep, it's my pointy one up on the top.
They held out their hand, revealing a tiny enameled tooth, before dropping it into my hand. Do you know what they did with teeth back before we met the Harkaks? They asked.
Well, there was a myth about... Do you know what they used to do with teeth back before we met the Harkaks?
They asked. Well, there was a myth about fey or elven creatures that would pay for teeth back in the day. But in those days, it was just parents telling made-up stories for their kids, and usually giving them a few credits worth of money, saying that it was from the fairy creature. Their smile was still wide as they yawned and curled into my arms.
That's silly, Daddy.
I thought they'd fully fallen asleep, but then came a little murmur.
Say hi to the tooth alien for me.
Of course, kiddo. Sweet dreams. I gave them a kiss on the forehead. Soon, the sounds of gentle snoring could be heard as they fell into deep sleep, and I stood up and transferred them across the house into their bed. On my way out and back to the living room, I pulled up my communicator and keyed an icon, hailing one of the Harkaks for a debt payment. Sure enough, maybe half a cycle later, one of the aliens had keyed up the door chime. I went out to greet them, looking up at the hulking creature. Their bodies looked like the worst parts of a lizard and a bug had been combined, covered with a shawl made of brightly colored metallic fabrics and intricate abstract patterns. Its head was posed in what I now understand to be a sign of restrained deference, and the closest set of claws awkwardly held a much too small data pad, which held up to read a name off in a halting English. Yep, that's me, I said. Or rather, my offspring's name. They're asleep right now, but have authorized me to deliver this on their behalf. I held out the closed fist with a tooth, and the creature opened an ornate gilded flask on its hip. Within, I could hear the gravelly ceramic sound of hundreds of other teeth, as I dropped dowels onto the top. Then the alien passed me the data pad, clearly grateful I did not have to try to work the small screen with my large talons. I scrolled to the top of the list, marveling at the figures I was seeing. Humans had long since paid their own bone debt, but thanks to having an additional 20-odd teeth lying around, it meant that we were also happy to pay the debts of many, many other species. In fact, I could see the indicator showed that this individual, with a name that I couldn't hope to pronounce without splitting my tongue in half, was indicated to be a member of the 47th planet that humanity had helped this way. I hit the indicator for the name, and a string of Harkak runes flashed across the screen. In front, something I could barely make out reading debt paid. There was also a simultaneous chime from my own pocket communicator. I knew it was payment for the tooth, drawn from the intergalactic fund of donations from species grateful to not have to part with their own limbs or be sliced open or carved up to pay the debt. When I had first asked my child, "Do you want to see how much you got for your tooth?" they had bounced up on the bed excitedly. Yeah! The tooth had been lost and submitted the week before, but intergalactic commerce being what it was, the payment had taken a little longer to process. Still, when I brought up on the screen, their eyes grew wide.
Wow, Daddy, that's a lot of zeros.
It certainly beat a few metal coins tucked under a pillow, in my opinion. I passed the datapad back and the Harkak representative took it with a passive grunt. It was at this point my curiosity got the better of my common sense, and I addressed the alien as it started to walk away. "Don't your people ever regret making the treaty with such a large loophole in it?" I asked. The Harkak looked taken aback, but then pondered the question for a moment. I wasn't sure if this was an individual speaking alone or the entire hive speaking through a mere vessel, but it took a moment either way to compose a response before saying,
In all honesty, what in the corpse-rotting underworld were we going to do with trillions of huge bones?
It said. I could tell that he was referencing at least 6 of the other intelligent species, who were more on the scale of Earth whales in terms of body size, and had bone clusters fully the size of small transparent vehicles. The alien held up a flask and rattled the contents once again.
All in all, you humans have saved us both a war and storage problem. I'd say that we got the good end of the bargain.
End of story. This is the first time I've read it, so it's not a re-T-Foss. Well, I'd imagine the extra ribs would take up a lot more space than extra teeth. Might as well go into recording mode, not recording mode. Ooh, I'm growling now. Fair enough, Marcus. Fair enough. Okie Dokie. On to the next one. Story number 3. Well, video number 3. 3. It's good, Marcus. It helps. And I'm glad it helps you. I think there's at least 200 people watching it at any given point, which is awesome. It pays for itself, which is even better. That is very, very interesting. So, the users on the line jumped from 300 to 1,500. Interesting. Okay. M1. F1. F1. M1, M3, M3, M1, F2, F2, M4, question mark, M3, question mark, M3, M4, F2, 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 It's very, very interesting, Joe. I think it's because it never ends, so there's no start to send out notifications or anything. So it could be something like that. F1, M1, M1, F1, M4, oop. M4, M1, 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 M1. ETOs. And 10. And 1. M3. M3. M10. F1. Yeah, well, I mean, algorithm shenanigans, always. Well, wouldn't be YouTube without the shenanigans. F1. M10. F2. F2, 1. M10. F1. Twitch glitch, YouTube shenanigans. Yep. F2. F2. M10. F1. M10. M1. M4. So definitely has a whole host of voices. Thank you for popping past, Maddie. I hope your workday goes well. I hope your bosses do boss things, and that means go to their office and ignore you. M3. F2, 1. M3. F1. F2. F1. F2. M3. F2. M4. F1, 2. F1. M4. M1. 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 Yes, F exclamation mark. Did I do that? Yep. M1. F1. M4, 3. M4. F1. I have no idea who this is. I think this is F4. M4. M3. M4. F2. Not a problem, Nigel. Not a problem. Hopefully everything's going well. and it's not too bad. M13. F2. M13. M3. M4. F1. M13. F2. That's not 1, that is 2. Well, I mean, Shady, it's very... It's a very specific voice. So, we'll see if we can... I don't think we'll fit it into the story. F1, 2, okay. That is a lot of voices. Alright. Let's try and do this story some justice. Proceed. Move that up there. Move the story over here. Go to recording mode. Open up the audio. Yeah, well, I mean, there's 2 female characters that speak a lot, so it's not too bad. We're going to start recording video, and we're going to start recording audio, and away we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Invisibly Beautiful, written by Marilyn of Many. The hot nighttime air blasting through the windows of the hovercar made conversation hard for all of us, but that didn't stop Paint. She pulled her lizardly face into the car long enough to ask, "Can we make more deliveries to climates like this? It's great." Not waiting for an answer, she stuck her snout back into the glass. "I'm just glad that the air is moist," said Captain Sunlight from the driver's seat. From the driver's chair. She was as fond of extreme tropics as the next scaly little heat seeker, but at least she was tactful about it. "If this was an arid climate, we'd dry out in no time." Z snapped a pincher in irritation, adjusting the cold pack draped around his shoulders. He had another around his praying mantis hips. I, he declared, "am glad it is dark. Sun this intense would fry us on the spot. This is not a temperature for any reasonable being." He cast a big bug eye in my direction, with what passed for subtlety. I hadn't spoken up yet, because I was busy guzzling water to replace all the sweat I was losing. Agreed, I said when I came up for air. There's a place this hot back home. We call it Death Valley. Paint leaned back into her chair. What? How could such a lovely heat mean death? It's so nice. For you, I said at the same time as Z. I would have high-fived him, but didn't want to hurt myself on his pinchers. Instead, I said, I'd die of heat stroke in no time. But you have that temperature regulation, Paint said. Waving a hand in my direction. I thought you were fine in hot and cold. Just because I'm warm-blooded doesn't mean I'm comfortable in all temperatures, I said to my scaly crewmate. Holding up an arm, I asked, "You see the sweat? This is not fun." I was wearing the smallest amount of clothes I could stand, sports bra and sports, and it was still too much.
At least the wind helps. I'll want to get the unloading done as quickly as possible when we stop.
We're almost there, Captain Sunlight said, pointing at the navigation screen. It was a good thing that she had a screen, since the view outside was an endless nightmare of seashore with sand dunes and rocks, but no memorable landmarks. You'd never know there was civilization here. You'd never know there was a civilization here. We'd been instructed to land our ship far inland so that we didn't risk blowing sand into a burrow when we took off again. Luckily, the hover car was acceptable. Thinking about dragging all those crates across the dunes by hand was enough to make me need another drink of water. When we settled into the park, it was beside a boulder at the very edge of the water. Gentle waves lapped at the very flat shore. No civilization that I could see. The air gushing in the windows was oppressively hot and wet.
The client should join us as at any time,
Captain Sunlight said, getting out of the chair.
Let's unload. Ah,
Paint said. Z led the way out the door while focused on taking deep breaths. This was unpleasant. Sunlight insisted on keeping all but the dimmest lights off for the sake of the client's nocturnal eyes. They meant the many stars helped. Luckily, there wasn't much around the trip over, and the boxes were head-sized, not gigantic hassles. There were a lot of them, though, and we weren't quite finished stacking them on the wet sand when the client rose from the waves. Captain Sunlight's polite greeting prompted me to look up in the time to see what looked like a lobster the size of a horse come splashing towards us. I clamped down on a startled yelp. Professional calm, I reminded myself. This is entirely normal. I did a pretty good job of pretending to be calm while I set down the box I was holding and went back for more. Sunlight kept up small talk and handled payment, both thanks to technological aid, a translator, and a credit screen with some impressive waterproofing. The voice that came from the speakers was almost too deep to hear. It reminded me of my aunt's favorite whale impression.
"Thank you for your use of your time," the client said. "Now previous delivery people arrived at high tide, leaving us with a long walk to the burrow."
A little crustacean leggy waved back at the water, where I assumed the doorway lurked. Now that I thought about it, I could almost make out a darker spot amongst the waves. And that's not so much a lobster as a huge shrimp, I decided, setting down another box. Looks like it should have some bright colors in the sun, too. The starlight didn't illuminate much, but the faint glow from the ship's cargo hold showed hints of red, blue, and green, and far too many legs, honestly. But you didn't hear that from me.
"Last one,"
Z announced, resting a box against the others.
"Would the esteemed client like to confirm the count?"
The client did, waving 2 legs while counting.
"Confirmed. I am pleased to do business with all of you."
Captain Sunlight started to say something else polite, but the client wasn't done talking.
"And it is pleasant to see such a lovely being of light."
With the way all those legs moved, it took me a heartbeat to realize that she meant me.
"But what?"
I blurted out. The rest of the crew were confused too.
"Being of light?"
"Being of light?" asked the captain tactfully.
"Yes, and those charming stripes too."
It was all I could do to not ask what again. It was all I could do not to ask what again. I just looked at Sunlight, wondering if I was being pranked. If so, she didn't look in on the joke.
I can't say that I noticed,"
she told the client.
"Your eyes are different, aren't they?"
asked that deep voice with deeper sympathy.
Must be."
"You'll have to take my word for it, then. You 2 little ones blend in with the surroundings, while you, friend, look more like an artfully painted land skimmer," she said to Z, who looked like he had decided to take it as a compliment. "But you glow like a gentle moon,
with all the curves of a crashing wave across your surface. My night has been enriched by the view. My night has been enriched with the view.
Thank you, I managed.
Well, thingy happened. What happened? Legion of Frame. Thank you for the follow. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you,
I managed.
My pleasure.
I will be sure to request such a prompt and pleasurable as for my next delivery. I thank you.
And we thank you, Captain Sunlight said. We'll be on our way. I trust that you can get the boxes into your home without trouble.
Oh, yes. This will be fine, said the client with more leg waves. I wasn't even sure which part of that complicated face to look at. May you have safe travels. With more polite words from Sunlight, we re-entered the hover car and took seats in an even hotter air. The door shut, the engine started, and a very welcome breeze wafted in. Sunlight eased away from the beach at a tactful speed before gunning it towards the ship. No one spoke until the sea was out of view behind a dune.
Glowing?
Exclaimed Paint.
Stripes? She didn't mean heat vision,
Z wanted to know. Can't be, Sunlight said from where she drove madly. She compared you to a nice paint job, remember?
As she should, Z said.
But was that a different
thing she was seeing when looking at me?
Hard to say, Sunlight said.
Robin? I have no idea, I burst out. This is the first time I've heard any of it. Is there a chance she's joking?
I don't think so, said Captain Sunlight. All the courier reviews of her behavior are top-notch. If she was the type to lie like that, then surely she would have done it before.
But Stripes?
I asked, sticking a forearm into... Thank you very much for the kind words, Legion. Thank you very much.
But Stripes?
I asked, sticking a forearm into the aisle.
You've seen me. What Stripes? I don't even have that much body hair. You don't glow in the dark either, said Z, staring with the kind of intensity that only someone with truly gigantic bug eyes can. You reflect a little starlight right now, but with all the grossness you're exuding, but I doubt that's what she meant. I laughed. You know, people do sometimes describe sweating as glowing, but it's really not meant to be taken literally.
Paint leaned close, all curiosity. Does something in your sweat fluoresce?
No, I said. Nothing about me does. This is absurd.
We can check in the wiki as soon as we get back in range, We can check the wiki as soon as we get back in range, the captain said. Itchy ear. Itchy ear.
We can check the wiki as soon as we get back in range, said Captain Sunlight. The ship's knowledge banks are pretty good, but let's not kid ourselves.
I can't wait, Paint said.
My money is on sweat.
I shook my head and finished the water bottle. With the way Sunlight was driving, we made it to the ship quickly indeed. Paint was already out of the car and telling the rest of the crew about it, while I barely stood up. I exited to several other curious faces, immediately telling them no, I had no idea. Normally after a kind of delivery, I would have gone to wash up, but this time I grabbed a towel to wipe off the sweat and to wear a shawl in the much cooler spaceship air. So, Captain Sunlight was calling for top speed, and she got it. Good thing we'd be refueling soon, because I was pretty sure we'd used up a solid chunk of our reserves. But we were back in range of easy broadcast in record time. Everyone who didn't have to be somewhere else crowded into the meeting room with the big info screen. And we all learned that humans freaking glow, just too dim for anyone to see.
unless they have an extra super special eyes. The kind of eyes that can also pick up the seams from cell division. The kind of eyes that can pick up the seams from cell division that are usually just as invisible. What the heck? I said, staring at the screen. Sunlight had called up both topics side by side, and everyone was reading at different speeds. I skimmed enough to be unsure of what emotion to settle on. It's not sweat, Z said. Well, it's also not heat vision, Paint retorted. It may sometimes coincide with heat vision, Captain Sunlight said, pointing as she read. Tied into the metabolism changing throughout the day. Human metabolism creates heat, right? So it could be both. But it said it's not. I still win the bet, Z insisted. Oh, you didn't even make a bet, Paint said. Mo sat beside me, flipping a tentacle in amusement.
It's a pity we don't have anyone with those extreme eyes on board, he told me. We could send the pair of you into dark areas, and she could see by your light.
I shook my head. This is just bizarre. I can't believe nobody told me. The squiddy alien shrugged a pair of tentacles.
If you can't see it, and neither can most of civilized galaxy, I am not surprised that it isn't common knowledge. What I'd want to know is, as he spoke louder, Hey, Z, do you want to get glowing paint to decorate yourself with now, since somebody is outshining you?
Z angled his antenna to glare. Maybe. Oh, me too, said Paint, to no one's surprise. Can we do the walls too? It'll be great if we ever lose power. I huffed a laugh. Look what you started.
You're welcome, Mer said. Care to see who can paint some nice new decorations in the highest and most creative places?
Absolutely. You know I can reach the top of the engineering crevices by putting a foot on each wall and shuffling upwards, right?
Mer cackled. And you haven't seen what a properly motivated, strong arm can do. Extra points for painting a likeness of Z somewhere you'll never find.
You're on. We stood. You are on. We shook on it, which is an absolutely disgusting experience when tentacles are involved. But I managed to pretend it wasn't. Gotta be professional, you know. End of story. Mouse. Go.
Greetings.
Whoops. Definitely need to move that shortcut. It's right next to where I rest my hand on the keyboard. At least there was music. It'd be kind of awkward if it was just dead silence. Not a problem, Red Vex. Thank you for popping past. It's very much appreciated. Good morning, Charles. I hope you're doing well. Oh, fair enough. Might as well. Not nearly as awkward as it would have been without music. I'm doing as well as can be. Thank you for asking.
Set sail on a ship. To the stars we shall roam. Through the vastness of space. No place like
All right.
our home.
Story number 2.
Hoist the sails high. Let the solar winds blow.
Fair enough. Chat can keep itself entertained.
Shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds.
Look, you need a speed mute button for when you cough and sneeze. So, mine is the tilde at the beginning, in front of 1.
Voyage, we'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full
D1, no, F1.
Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sail the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our
Okay, these are 2 different sentences. This is F1. That's why it didn't make sense.
with a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams. Through the nebulas and mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Give home maze upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea.
This is Jeff Foxworthy ripoff. Yeah, you might be a space orc if you put guns on your guns. Good morning, Raptor. Hope you're doing well. Alrighty. Let's try this with volume this time. Alrighty. And away we go. Story number 2. You Might Be A, written by Credible333. Grog tried to be subtle, but there's a limit to that when they're trying to peek at someone's anatomy. Can I help you? Lisa inquired as she turned around to see him looking down at her collar. Grog's 4 slim arms involuntarily snapped in front of his head. A death wielder twice his size was scary enough for a futile defensive instincts to take over. He dramatically regretted the implication that she might attack, knowing her to be gentle with fragile sentiments. Knowing her to be gentle with fragile sentience. Perhaps that's because she knew his 4 arms couldn't stop a deadly blow from one of hers. Oh, it's nothing. I just wanted to. That is. Could if I could. Only if you want to. That is. This ad say. Why were you trying to look down my shirt? And why were you doing it in the wrong way? The interesting bits on the human are on the upper torso. The interesting bits on the human upper torso are in the front. Oh, it's just that Station Master Gree proclaimed that he was irritated at some of the some of the people whose homeworld isn't so pleasant. I was trying to determine your colorization. I was trying to determine your coloration to see if it was irritated at you. I was trying to determine your coloration to see if it was irritated at you. This puzzled Lisa. Generally, other sentients didn't discriminate on ethnicity of other species. They either discriminated against the whole species or none of them. They really were colorblind in the Azrula, literally. But you can see I'm white. I mean pink. So why the perving? Oh, I wasn't perving. He has a problem with death wielder redneck, so I merely wished to determine if your neck was red. If it was, I would warn you as your friend. Across the room, a booming laugh was heard. The volume alone gave away that it was Cyrac. Lisa instinctively shifted stance to be ready to dodge. Cyracs were one of the most notorious death wielder species, and they seemed to have a big beef with humans. Not humanity, the species. They just seemed to end up in fights with bipeds,
Seeing it was Z didn't make Lisa any more relaxed. This Cyrac, however, was leaning back on his rear legs, exposing his soft underbelly, so clearly no fight was envisaged.
It's a cultural term, not a literal one. The term is difficult to define, but since you're interested, and since I have a degree in human studies, I will help you. I'll attempt to determine if Sergeant Willis here is a redneck death wielder.
I think I would know if I were a redneck.
Not necessarily. Let us begin the determination of your status. If you ever took a tooth as a hunting trophy, and you needed a friend to help carry it back, you may be a redneck death wielder. If the wind speeds were higher than city limits... If the wind speeds were higher than city speed limits while you were piloting a wind-powered vehicle on a hostile surface and you planned for that, you may be a redneck death wielder. If you were piloting a wind-powered vehicle on a hostile surface and didn't plan for wind speeds over city speed limits, but were pleasantly surprised because you'll get there faster, you may be a redneck death wielder. If you have ever designed something with 2 million tons of explosives and it wasn't even a bomb, you might be a redneck death wielder. If your whole species developed a weapon used to kill animals 100 times their size, and then 250,000 years later you developed writing, you may be a redneck death wielder. If a rumor on your homeworld says that a meter-long horn of a 3-ton, heavily armored, short-tempered beast cures sexual problems and the species almost goes extinct, you may be a redneck death wielder. If an empire with 20 times your star systems and 100 times your economy asks you to give up your weapons, and you said, "Come and take him," then you had to explain that wasn't a transport request. You may be a redneck death wielder.
Grog was furiously taking notes, fascinated by the concept that seemed to have so many indicators and no solid definition. Another human had been approaching during this exchange, unnoticed. It was amazing how such large creatures could be so silent. Grog heard that it was because there was a lot of hunting involving humans both ways, whatever that meant. This one, a male, Grog believed, made Lisa look small. His limbs bulged out as though strong ropes bound his bones. His neck was more a triangle than a straight line. He approached Z far closer than etiquette usually allowed. Grog realized he was seeing someone get in someone's face.
You are forgetting one sure sign of a redneck there, Professor. Oh, what's that? When a redneck hears you say the word redneck, they'll remind you, smile when you say it.
End of story.
Awesome. I didn't record that. So we do it again. But I didn't turn the microphone off, so I mean it's a half win, I suppose. At least it's a short story. No. Story number 2. You Might Be A, written by Credible333. Grog tried to be subtle, but there is a limit to that when you're trying to peek at someone's anatomy.
Can I help you? Lisa inquired as she turned around to see him looking down at her collar.
Grog's 4 slim arms involuntarily snapped from front of his face. Grog's 4 slim arms involuntarily snapped in front of his head. A death wielder twice his size was scary enough for futile defensive instincts to take over. He immediately regretted the implication that she might attack, knowing her to be gentle with fragile sentience. Perhaps that's because she knew his 4 arms couldn't stop a deadly blow from one of hers.
It's nothing. I just wanted to. That is, well, if you could, only if you want to. That is to say,
Why were you trying to look down my shirt, and why were you doing it the wrong way? The interesting bits on a human upper torso are in the front.
Oh, it's just that Station Master Gray proclaimed that he was irritated at some of the people whose homeworld isn't so pleasant. I was hoping to determine your coloration to see if he was irritated at you.
This puzzled Lisa. Generally, other sentients didn't discriminate on ethnicity of other species. Either they discriminated against the whole species Either discriminated against the whole species, or none of them. They really were colorblind, in the Azurus, literally.
But you can see I'm white, I mean pink, so why the perving?
Oh, I wasn't perving. He has a problem with Death World or rednecks, so I merely wish to determine if your neck was red. If it was, I would warn you, and you are a friend.
Across the room, a booming laugh was heard. The volume alone gave away that it was a Cyrac. Lisa instinctively shifted stance to be ready to dodge. Cyracs were one of the most notorious Deathworlder species, and they seemed to have a big beef with humans. Not humanity, the species. They just seemed to end up in fights with bipeds. Seeing it was Z didn't make Lisa any more relaxed. The Cyrac, however, was leaning back on his rear legs, exposing his soft underbelly, so clearly no fight was envisaged.
It's a cultural term, not a literal. The term is difficult to define, but since you're interested, and since I have a degree in human studies, I shall help you. I will help you. I will attempt to determine if Sergeant Willis here is a redneck Deathworlder.
I think I would know if I were a redneck.
Not necessarily. Let's just begin the determination of your status. If you ever took a tooth as a hunting trophy and you needed a friend to help you carry it back, you may be a redneck Deathworlder. If the wind speeds were higher than city speed limits while you were piloting a wind-powered vehicle on a hostile surface and you planned for that, you may be a redneck Deathworlder. If you were piloting a wind-powered vehicle on hostile surface and didn't plan for wind speeds over city speed limits, but were pleasantly surprised because you'll get there faster, you may be a redneck Deathworlder. If you have ever designed something with 2 million tons of explosives and it wasn't even a bomb, you may be a redneck Deathworlder. If your species developed a weapon used to kill animals 100 times their size, and then 250,000 years later you developed writing, you may be a redneck Deathworlder. If a rumor on your homeworld says that a meter-long horn of a 3-ton, heavily armored, short-tempered beast cures sexual problems, and the species almost goes extinct, you may be a redneck Deathworlder. If an empire with 20 times your star systems and 100 times your economy asked you to give up your weapons and you said, "Come and take them," then you had to explain that wasn't a transport request. You may be a redneck Deathworlder.
Grog was taking notes, fascinated by the concept that seemed to have so many indicators but no solid definition. Another human had been approaching during this exchange, unnoticed. It was amazing how such large creatures could be so silent. Grog had heard that it was because there was a lot of hunting involved humans both ways. Grog had heard that it was because there was a lot of hunting involving humans both ways, whatever that meant. This one, a male, Grog believed, made Lisa look small. His limbs bulged out as though strong ropes bound his bones. His neck was more a triangle than a straight line. He approached Z far closer than etiquette usually allowed. Grog realized that he was seeing someone get into someone's face.
You're forgetting one sure sign of a redneck there, Professor. What's that? When a redneck hears you say the word redneck, they'll remind you, smile when you say it.
End of story. Hey, I recorded it this time. No, no. Stop doing. Alrighty. That is 5 stories. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4 videos, 5 stories. I think that is enough for the day. My voice is starting to complain a little bit. So I think that's going to be it for the day. So, thank you all for joining me today. It is very much appreciated. I do appreciate your time and your interaction. Hopefully I was entertaining enough the first and second time telling the same story to keep you guys entertained. I'll see you all tomorrow.